Hello, everybody. We're going to start our webinar in 5 minutes. Hello, everybody. My name is Yevhen, and let me welcome you at the 8th day of OroCommerce training. Let me remind you that yesterday we have checked the checkout topic. In scope of this topic, we have seen what is checkout, what is its part in the OroCommerce sales flow at the storefront. And we have also checked how customer can select his address information, billing, shipping information, and complete the checkout and submit the order. Today, we're going to see in details the payment and the shipping steps of the checkout. We're going to check the payment methods and shipping method to understand how they work, how they are organized, and what developer can make, what developer can do with them in order to implement their requirements. So let us start. Our first topic is payment methods, and here is the general information about the payment methods and what they used to. So payment methods is the way how customer can pay for his order, and we have already seen that in scope of the checkout. Payment methods are configured from the backend, and they define how user will pay for the products, and need to understand that user may specify information either immediately during the checkout or perhaps after the checkout. It depends on the use case. It depends how you want to organize the work in your application. And the payment methods usually added via the integration. This is the way how we recommend to do it, how we're doing that in Oro, and this is the way we recommend it in the customization, just because we already have an infrastructure for it and we have all the required classes to make it work. So first, let me remind you how it looks at the storefront side. I need to go to the management console, need to find the user and login as usual. Okay, so let me start the checkout. Just to be sure, I want to check if I have any checkout started. Yes, I do. Let me use this one then. So payment information is specified on the payment step here. So here we can see check money order, we can see payment term, we can see authorized.net. So these three items are three different payment methods, which we can specify in the system configuration and we can use here. Let me show you how they are configured. So as we have already discussed, payment methods are added as an integration. So we need to go to the manage integration topic, manage integration item here and check our integrations. So these are all integrations, not only payment integrations, but here we have payment term responsible for this payment term method here. We have here authorized.net responsible for the authorized.net item here. And we also have check money order responsible for this check money order item here. The order is different because it's ordered not based on the integration order, but based on the items in the list. And that's the main idea. So you have your integrations and you have them there. By doing that, by adding those integration and adding payment rules, I go check payment rules a little bit later, you are allowing customer to specify how exactly they're going to pay for the integration. And what we're going to do next, we're going to check all the standard payment methods we have out of the box in Oro. We're going to check payment term, we're going to check money order, and one of the external integrations, which is authorized.net. But just let me remind you that in Oro, we have multiple possibilities to have multiple payment methods enabled, and you may enable as much as you need. And we also have quite a lot of additional extensions, which you may install from the Oro marketplace and enable them in the system and configuration. So just in case, you can always First, you can go check the documentation. You may check the list of the methods we support out of the box. So these are PayPal methods, approve, authorized, net and paid wildcards methods. And you can always go to the marketplace, filter them by the integration. So you will find here not only payment integration, but other integrations as well. But in general, for example, here we have this one. We have, let me check. We have Express Checkout, we have Limonatic. So basically you can find quite a lot of the payment integrations here in the marketplace too. So if you need some integration, you may check it first in the Oro code, and if you will not see it there, you may always go to the marketplace and see maybe already it's implemented by somebody from the Oro community. So let us check these methods one by one. So first one is a payment term. So payment term means that there is some kind of agreement between the buyer and seller, and buyer has to pay to the seller based on this agreement or based on some kind of signed contracts, depending on the situation, but one way or another, this thing called payment terms. So how you can specify the payment term and how you can assign it to customer. So first, a second. First, we have a list of the payment terms. So payment terms are those conditions or those agreements between the buyer and seller. Here we have 4 out of the box called net 10, net 30, net 60, net 90, which means that buyer has to pay for the order during the 10, 30, 60, or 90 days after the order was submitted. This is a very common scenario for the B2B, and you may also add your own payment term. So just a plain label, for example, let's call it immediately. Yeah? So here are payment terms which can be used by the customers or the customer groups. However, you have probably already mentioned that at the storefront, we have only one payment term. In our case, it's net 30. And it's done this way because there is only one payment term which can be associated to each customer out of the box. How it is done? The customer has a special field called payment term, and you may specify this value there. So in fact, here you can see even a column called payment term associated to the specific customer. So my current customer is company A. And if we go to the view page of this customer, we will be able to find payment term field here with the value net 10. We can always change this value, or we can even remove this value. In this case, not this one. We can remove this value. In this case, application will fall back to the appropriate value from the customer group. So let me save it. And so now here we can see net 90. Now it's not net 10, but net 90. It's defined for the customer group. If I will go to the storefront and refresh the page, I will be able to see here new payment term methods called net 90 because now it uses payment term from the appropriate customer group. And then on the customer group level, in our case, this group called all customers. On the customer group level, we can also specify this payment term, and we can also disable it. So if we'll disable it or if we will remove it, it means that neither of the customers from customer group without specified payment term will be able to use payment term method at all. So you should memorize that if you want to use payment term method, either customer group or customer has to have assigned payment term. So now I'm going to disable this payment term method. So you can see it's now empty and A not available. And now at the storefront, you can see that this payment method has disappeared from the list of options, and that is why we cannot see it. We cannot see it any longer because neither customer nor customer group have this payment method assigned to it. So let me assign it again. I'm going to assign it to the customer, which is company A. This one. And I will use the new method I have just added called immediately. Great. And so here I can see payment term again, but now it has terms called immediately. By doing that, you can create, for example, 5 or 10 usual agreements with your customer and assign a specific agreement as a payment term to each customer. So the customer will have this reminder here every time he is submitting the order. Let's say that he has to pay pays for the order during the next 30 days. So this was the payment term. The next method called check money order is the very, very simple method where you can just specify the name of the who you pay to and where you have to check to. And these are just 2 informational fields, nothing more. So these informational fields are set on the integration level. Let me show it now here. So here is our check money order method. And here we have standard integration information like name, label, short label. We have paid to and we have sent to. So these are just 2 additional fields set for this check money order integration. And we can see these fields here. We have no default restriction for the check money order, but we may implement custom ones if we want to using the payment rules, and we will see it a little bit later. But for now, please remember that there are no restrictions out of the box for it. By the way, we can also check the configuration for the payment term, but it's simple enough, doesn't have any custom fields, it's just the label and name. No more information for the payment term. And then we have custom methods, and we're going to check the Authorized.net method in order to see how it works and how to submit the order. So Authorized.net method is using the credit card in order to charge customer in order to actually do something. So here we have a field, a form where customer has to specify the credit card number, the expiration date, and CVV. Currently, the Authorized.net integration is set up in test mode or sandbox mode, and we have no real charge done for the customer when somebody is using Authorized.net, but we are going to check it anyway to see how it works. So here we can see test mode, we can see additional options, we can see the labels, we can see allowed credit card types. Now here it's Visa and MasterCard. We can see API login, API transaction key. We can see here bank account types we're supporting for the check. We can enable CIM, which is Customer Information Manager information. And we also have a couple of advanced options. Again, we're going to check later when we're going to see what payment methods are and how they're built internally. For now, you can just remember that you can specify this method from the integrations. And then if everything is all right, you will be able to use it at the storefront. You may also add other methods. For example, out of the box, we have PayPal. We have also PayPal Payflow Gateway. We have PayPal Payments Pro, and you can also add your custom methods using the additional extensions you can install from the marketplace. Every time you're switching to the new integration, you will be able to see new fields. For example, for the PayPal Payflow Gateway, you have this set of fields. For the PayPal Payments Pro, you have different set of fields. For the Authorized.net, you have, again, different set of fields. They have different credentials, they have different configuration, and all this stuff can be set on the integration level here. So let us continue. Now we're going to check the code and see how these methods are implemented on the code level and how you can implement your own payment method if you want to. So First, you have to check, or we have to check the method interface. And this interface is, in fact, the interface which defines implementation of the specific payment method. First, you can see here the list of standard actions which can be done for any payment method. It's not fixed. You may either enable only a couple of them, or you may create your own actions. These are just standard actions we have out of the box, and in most cases, it's enough. We have validate action, authorize action, capture action, charge action, invoice action, purchase action, and pending action. Then we have a method called execute, where application receives the action name. So either one of these or maybe something custom, so just a string. And then we have a payment transaction, which we go and check a little bit later, but in general, this is an object that encapsulates, the class that encapsulates information about the payment transaction. Here we have the identifier of this payment method. It has to be unique, whether it's applicable. So here you may check the current context of payment method. This one is called payment context interface. And let's say you may allow or not allow using this payment method based on some conditions or based on some expressions. Again, we're going to check them when we're going to talk about the payment rules. And finally, we have supports, which defines which of these actions, or maybe some other ones, are supported in custom payment method. Let's check the authorized payment method we have just seen on the UI and see how it's implemented here. So the identifier is coming from the configuration, but in general, just a string, is applicable. Here we can see that application checks whether the request is secure, and it's important because Authorized.net interacts with the API using HTTPS. That is why we are not allowing it if application is configured using the HTTP method. Here we can see a list of the supported actions, which is authorize, capture, charge, purchase, and validate. Then we have the execute method, where we are basically just executing required action using the appropriate method from the class. Here we have validate action, here we have purchase action, here we have authorize action, we have charge action, we have capture action, and we can see some logic hidden inside this method, which in fact doing some operations. Pay attention that all these methods accept payment transaction as a method, as an argument, and they interact with it, and they may change payment transaction during the execution. We're going to check it a little bit later when we're going to debug this method in details. Next thing we have here is called payment method provider. So this is a class responsible for creating and providing instance of the payment method. Again, it has its own interface, does payment methods. Pay attention, it may return array of payment methods, not only one. It can return it based on identifier, or you can check it whether it's defined or not. Again, here we have payment net authorized net method provider, which extends standard abstract payment method provider, which has all these methods already implemented. That is why if you want to create your custom method, feel free to use all the framework capabilities we have in or out of the box. So here we can see get payment methods. Here we can see get methods. Here we can see payment method by identifier and has payment by identifier. So it simply gets methods from the appropriate collection of methods we have already initialized. Next thing is called payment method view. So payment method view is this small block we're seeing under each of the payment methods. So in the check money order, we are seeing the information about who is payable to and where we need to send check. In the payment term, we can see the list, we can see the current term associated with the customer or customer group. And in Authorized.net, we can see this block with the credit card selection form. And in general, every payment method, as you can see, has its own payment method view. This block is called payment method view, and this is how you can implement it. Again, payment method view has its own interface, which has options, which has block, label, and short label, admin label, and payment method identifier to connect all these things together. In general, payment method view is just a simple layout update block and nothing more than that. So here we can see the options passed to the required payment method. Here we can see form view, payment method component options, whether we are logging credit cards, client key, API login key, test mode. So all the information we need to pass to the storefront in order to make sure that customer can see that form there. Please be extra careful because you must not pass the information directly to the storefront. For example, you cannot pass credentials, login and password. So we can see only the key and login ID. We don't see any secret information here. And even if something happening with via the JavaScript, you must not send all this information together for the security reason. And this was the class itself. Now let us check the layout block responsible for this information. So here is the payment view. This is the class we have checked previously. And now we should be able to see here the name of the block and here the name of the block, as you can see. We have a couple of blocks here in case we want to check them. And let us find this block and see what we have there. Yep. So here it is. So here we have a simple form rendered with all these options. And here we have a JS component. This one is for order review only. But in general, this is the way how you have to implement your form view, and you have to just render the information here. You can see this form because everything in this case encapsulated into the form. And in fact, we have here view options form view, which is this form view. As you can see, this is one of the options we have passed there. But in general, we can now do the same thing for some simple methods, like let's say the payment term method. Payment term view. I think this is it. Payment method view provider. This is the interface. Sorry, the wrong one. Get payment method views. I think this is it. Wait a second. So this is the interface. Yeah, that's it. So here's the block name, payment methods, payment term widget. And now we can find this widget and see how it's done. So again, we can see here view options value, which is just the name of our payment term rendered at the storefront. And if we return to the code, we can see that values in fact is just a string where we are rendering the payment term label, which is just think like terms with a placeholder. And we see the actual payment term extracted from the payment term based on our context, but in our case, it simply checks the customer payment term or the general payment term using the payment term provider. So this is how you can get the information and render it at the storefront. And next thing, we have payment method view provider. So here we have two sets of classes. We have payment method plus payment method provider, and we have payment method view plus payment method view provider. And again, it has the same responsibility, similar responsibility to the payment method provider. Just one more difference, it generates not payment methods, but payment method views. So it generates that block, which you may have at the storefront there. So here you see the interface, again, very identical to the one we have seen for the payment methods. And here we can see implementation for the Authorized.net. Again, pretty straightforward, which is down from the standard one we have in order out of the box. You may ask yourself why you may need multiple such methods. Well, the idea here that you may have multiple types of the multiple instances of the same integration type. So for example, you may have different methods for the check money order. So you may have check money order for the enterprise customers. You may have check money order for the regular customers. You may have check money order for the wholesale customers. And these will be 3 different payment methods and 3 different options here. And then customer have to specify the appropriate one for them. And then they have different information. And so these will be different instances of the appropriate payment method. Next thing is the payment config. So payment config is information where all the payment data is stored. So there you may find information about the payment name, payment label, payment admin label, and final payment identifier. So this is just some kind of container where you can store information. You can, of course, extend it to get even more information there. So this is an example for Authorized.net payment method. We can see here much more options. We have here API login key. We have here clear client key. We have here flag whether it's we have enabled customer integration management or not. And we have standard setters and getter for all this information. So this is just a standard configuration. You can extend it from the parameter break from Oro. And if you want to quickly implement your payment methods, feel free to use this class too. Now we are going to check the integration with the checkout. So to check how it works, we need to understand that every time we are working with the checkout, in fact, we are performing some action with the payment methods. And we have several actions we have seen already, but now let's check the 4 most commonly used during the checkout. First one is validate. So validate makes sure that customer have entered all the information properly. Let's say when we have entered credit card and CVV, we need to validate that information is proper and we can in fact charge customer. Validation is optional thing, and some payment methods may have it, like for example, Authorized, and some may not have it, like payment term, because we don't need to validate anything, we already have the payment term. And this is one of the things we are going to check how we organized in the checkout a little bit later. And we have authorization. So authorization is usually checks that we in fact can charge, not only we have access, but we can also charge. And sometimes it can be used as an activation or initiate transaction in order to start charging money for customer. And we have capture, capturing the authorized amount. It means completing the authorized amount, or we can charge. Basically, it's capturing non-zero amount. Different payment methods call these actions differently, but one way or another, these are the 4 most commonly used you may face in almost any integration. Now the payment transaction. So payment transaction is a special class and object, and instance of this class object used to store information about the payment transaction happening in Oro. It stores main information like amount, currency, and the name of the action which has been performed. So each transaction has to have an action. It stores a request and response in the encrypted way, of course, but just in case, you may always go to database and debug all the information, debug request and response you have from the API, and understand how it works. You may have source and related payment transactions. Let's say that you need to do 3 things via the OR. First, you need to validate the action, then you need to authorize some money, and then you finally need to capture them or charge them. And these three operations are 3 different transactions related to the same operation on the third-party API level, on the authorized net level, let's say, and you need to have the chain. And source and related payment transactions is the way to organize it. So they can be source, and then can be other transaction which uses the source as a related transaction. So we have chain. We're going to debug it and see it in details, but this is how you want to organize, how you have to organize this kind of information in the Oro code. And there are 2 main entities used to store information about the payments. So first one is the payment transaction. We have discussed this one already. And we have payment status. This is a very simple entity used to store status of the specific entity. payment status of a specific entity from the order or from the checkout to understand whether we have already completed the transaction or not yet. And again, let's see how do we work with it in the Authorized.net. So for example, here we have capture transaction. We have Authorized transaction, which is a source transaction. So again, first we are authorizing money, then we are charging them, and that's why we may have two transactions. So here we're starting the source transaction or the parent transaction, you may call it like that. If we don't have it, we are not allowing to do anything. So we're doing a successful false. But if we do have it, we in fact can do charge. We can create new transaction. This is the ones we've been working with. And we can also deactivate the parent transaction. At least this is how it works here. And before we'll go to the payment rules, let's us debug all this information, all this process and details, and let us see how this thing works. I'm going to use the Authorized.net as an example because first I have already set up. The second is a very good example, demonstrates all the different ways how we can work with the payment methods. So first I need to open my payment method itself. Payment method interface. I need to find Authorized.net method. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put breakpoint here to capture or to intercept all the actions, all the operations which will be done using these payment methods. Okay. I think that should be enough. Let me enable this debug. Okay, great. And now let's go to the storefront and try to submit the order using the Authorized.net payment method. So this is the storefront. Let me disable all breakpoints I had before that, just to be sure. Okay, great, everything is fine. So now I have to select Authorized.net, and I'm going to use the sandbox credentials. Authorized.net has special credit cards which can be used in sandbox mode. Sandbox credit cards. So let's say I want to use Visa. Expiration date is relevant, but CVV is not, because for the CVV we have special codes, and let's say I want to have correct one, which is 900. And let me continue. Okay, so now we have the first action called validate. This is the place where we are trying to make sure that customer indeed entered the valid data. So in this case, this validation is very, very simple. We're simply creating a transaction without doing anything here yet. But still, this is already a transaction. And now we can save it and make sure that everything is all right. And let me demonstrate this entity in the database. Payment transaction, this is the table. And I think this is the transaction we are talking about. Yeah, so here we have the checkout entity. We have we do not have the source payment transaction yet because this is the first transaction in chain. But here we have payment method, we have the action, we have the amount because the validation has 0 amount. And we also have 0 request and 0 response because this is not a real information. This is not a real request, just a validation request to make sure that everything is all right. Now, on the order review step, review step, I can actually submit the order, and this is where our application is going to work with this transaction and charge it. So here we have action called purchase. And now I'm going to check all the options. So these are the options we need to use in the API. So you can see this, basically it's a request we are going to send to the API. We have all the information, we have all the line items, we have the addresses, we have data description, data value. So just a request to the external API. We have the action name. So action name is the charge, which is our standard action. We have our payment transaction already prepared. It's not saved yet, pay attention, doesn't have the ID, but we have already prepared the information and we have already filled the request. But we don't have the response because, well, we did not receive it yet. This is exactly what we're going to do now. So this is the call to the API. Response, gateway, request, so just some kind of API call, nothing more than that. Let's wait a little bit. Yeah, so I have received response. We can see some additional information here, some kind of data. And now we can put this response information, whether it was successful, whether we have a reference, what kind of data to the payment transaction. And after that, our payment transaction already have the response information. And by having that, we can always debug this information and make sure that, in fact, the data sent back by the API is valid and the order can be successfully submitted. In case if you don't have it, you can always use information as a log. So if something went wrong, you can always go to the database, decrypt this information, and check it here. So in our case, it's okay. So everything is fine. But if it's not, then you can always go to database and check it and see why it's not all right. And here we have message and successful and everything is fine. Now we're saving this payment transaction and completing the order. So now it's going to the final step. Yep, and so here we are. Thank you for the purchase. Let's check the database and let's check the payment transaction table again. So now we have one more row here at the bottom. And pay attention that now we have a source transaction. So transaction number 119 is uses transaction 118 as a source. And this is the source of the transaction. This is the ID we are referring to. So basically this is a reference to the previous row. But this one is already referred to the order entity, not the account entity. And here we have different action charts. We have a reference. This reference is the reference to the real request to the third-party application, to the API. Let me check if I have already received the email for it. Yes, I did. And let me show it here. So here is my merchant response from the third-party API. And here we should be able to see this transaction ID. Yes, that's it. This is a response generated by the Authorized.net, and I have received it in order to validate everything is fine. And we can see all the information we have submitted to the third-party API, including the transaction ID. And this transaction ID can be used as a reference to track that everything is fine here. We have also the amount, the currency, and we also have decrypted request and response. So, encrypted request and response. If you want to debug it, you have to decrypt them, of course, but one way or another, you have this information here for the debug purpose. Now, I want to show you one more trick. By default, in this case, Authorized.net always charges money immediately because, well, this is how it's organized. But we may enable the option, rather we can use the option in the integration configuration called action and change this behavior. Let me show it. Here we have the payment action called either authorize and charge or authorize only. By doing authorize and charge, application immediately charges money, and well, basically after that the order is completed and we have nothing else to do. And the order is created already with the payment status completed. But we may also authorize only, so we can only reserve the money but do not charge them yet, and then charge them manually. So this is what I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to change the payment action to authorize only. First, I'm going to show you the order I have just submitted, so we can compare it a little bit later. So here's our order number 119. And here we have payment history. And payment history, we have one transaction, which is charge. And we can see that it was successful. Payment method now is the paid in full, so it's payment complete. Now I'm going to submit another order from the storefront. I'm going to use the shopping list for that. Everything will be exactly the same. I'm going to use Authorized.net again. Submit the order. And everything is all right again, but if we can check the transaction table in database, we also can see two transactions, 120 and 121, but these two transactions are not validate and charge, but validate and authorize. So we'll only authorize or reserve this money, but we did not charge them yet. And well, also here I can see this reference or identifier of the transaction in the third-party application, in the third-party API. Now, what we have to do, we have charged it manually from the management console. Let me open that on new order. It should have ID 120. Yep, so this is the order. And pay attention, now it's not paid in full, now it's payment authorized, so it's not charged yet. And what we can do now at the management console, we can charge this money. Here we have an action called capture. Click it. And only then, or only now, the actual charging is going to happen. And now we can see the capture transaction here. And we can also check in the database. We can see this new transaction with the new ID. This is it, capture. And they both refer to the same identifier or to the same payment in the third-party application. So IDs are the same, but these were two different requests to the third-party API, and we can track and debug each of these requests. And pay attention to the dependency between these transactions. So transaction validate was used as a source for the transaction authorize, and then transaction authorize was used as a source for the transaction capture. So here we have the chain of these three transactions: validate, authorize, and capture. So this is how you can work with the payment method and how you can charge money manually or do it automatically during the checkout. Now let's talk a little bit about the payment rules. So payment rules is the entity which connects together payment method and checkout. So every time you want to add your payment method to the checkout, you must not only create the payment method itself, but you also have to create a payment rule, which will tell when and how this payment method will be used. So payment rule is the very simple thing which have name, sort order, currency. It may have destination, and it also has an expression which allows or not allowed to use it under certain circumstances. We have already seen expressions when we talked about the discounts, and here we have a very similar situation. So first, let me demonstrate the standard configuration. So let me remind you, I have three payment methods by default. And if we go to the payment rules, we're going to see these three payment rules. They have name, they have flag, they have sort order, they have currency, and they may also have an expression. So here's the configuration, names of order currency. We also have checkbox called stop further rule processing. Again, it works exactly the same as for the discounts. So if you have multiple payment methods, then after the first one is checked, or first one is enabled and successfully will be used, the other ones will not be checked. Here we have destinations, which allows to use this payment method only for a specific destination, only for specific billing addresses. By default, it's empty, so it means it will be used for all addresses. Expression, where we can put some kind of special expression in order to allow or not allow usage of this method. The method itself, in our case, we have only payment term, and the websites. By setting some website here, you may allow or disallow usage of the payment method at the certain websites. If it's empty by default, it means that it will be available for all the websites. So let us pick some payment method. Let's say we are allowing to use check money order always, authorized not always, but term and term may be used only if we are ordering, let's say, more than 1,000. If we want to buy more than $1,000 products. So what we can do, first we have to go to documentation and check the expression rule syntax. It's very similar to the discount, and I'm going to use a variable called subtotal value. I'm going to put the subtotal value greater or equals than 1,000. Save it. And let's go to the storefront and see how it works. So here I have a small shopping list, which only $120. Let me go here and go to the payments tab. And as you can see now, payment term method is no longer available because we have less than $1,000 order here. However, I can now change my order. Yeah, it's enough. And now pay attention, we can see payment term because now we have 4,000 instead of instead of the 120, and that is why this payment term method is available. So this is a very nice thing. This expression is used often on the real customizations, and you can use the addresses, you can use shipping methods, origins, customer information, customer users, you can use line items and validate the information and line items in many other things. The common customization in this area is to add some kind of special field to the customer or customer user and check it directly. So let's say you want to allow specific to use PayPal only to specific customers. So you may add a flag called customer.paypal or customer.paypal supported and add an expression customer.paypal supported equals true to the appropriate payment methods. By doing that, you will technically allow to use payment methods only for the customers who have this flag set to true. Or you can rely on the addresses, or you can rely, for example, on the shipping origin. And you may also add your own variables there if you're a developer and you want to have new expressions in that area. Talking about the payment methods, there is also a thing called payment context, and this is exactly the place which is used by the expression to get the data and to check the expressions. And here we have customer users, line item, billing address. So all the information we have here we can use in the expression. Just pay attention that please remember that it's using it uses property path, not the direct reference, so it will be called shipping origin in camel case, not shipping underscore origin, how it's defined internally. And this is a place where all these things, all of these expressions are generated and checked. So here we have list of the rules. So rules are, well, payment rules we have created previously. And then here we are checking based on the context which ones of these payment methods and which one of these payment rules are available. We are interacting over it, and we can merge only the payment methods which remained here. So by doing that, we are allowing only the payment methods which satisfy our conditions and match the expression. Now we're going to check step by step each of the actions triggered during the checkout to understand where it's called and how to customize it. So the first one is the validate action. It's represented by the PHP class called validate action, and this is a standard workflow action. What is happening here? Application executes the transaction. Creates the transaction. Application executes the transaction and saves the data to the database. Here we have the place where the appropriate payment transaction is created. So here we have some kind of provider which can create our entity. We can fill it with transaction options if we have them. We can execute payment transactions. This is the place where we are calling appropriate method from the appropriate action from the payment method. And then we are saving it to the database and just allowing to use this payment transaction later in the workflow context. Let me open this method, open this class in the PHP store, and let's see where it will lead us to. So first one is a create payment transaction. So this is just a standard method, standard way to create a new entity. So create new class and fill it with default data, payment method type and object. Then we have execute transaction. So here we are getting required payment method based on the identifier. And they are executing it. So this is a place where calling this method, that method called execute with the required action from the appropriate payment method. And we are passing here the required action from the payment transaction. So here you can see it. And the action was defined here, which is validate. And finally, we're saving it to the database, which is just standard entity manager, persist entity manager flush. That's it. Now, let us discuss where it is called in the workflow definition. So it is called in the transition called continue to order view definition. And here we have all the information, including payment validate action. So it's a place where it is called. Pay attention, it is called only if the payment action is supported. So here we have special guard condition called payment method supports, and we're checking that it supports validate action. So this thing, in fact, calls payment method is supported with the validate action. So this is one of the interface method from the payment method class too. So here we have the object with checkout, here we have the payment method, which we have started on the storefront, and we have all the transaction options which may be needed there in order to validate the action. Sometimes validate may be a dummy method, sometimes it may not be used at all. For example, let's say no support validation, but sometimes it may perform a real request with third-party API to validate that data entered by customer is valid. Next action is the purchase. So purchase is the second main action triggered during the checkout. So here is the PHP class responsible for it. Again, it's a standard workflow action. Also creates payment transaction, but in our case, it's created with the action called purchase. Checks whether validation is supported or not. As you can see, if we have supported validation, we will use that validation transaction as a source transaction, so to recognize that big chain. Then we create, then we fill our payment transaction with our values. In our case, it's money and currency. Again, transaction options. And finally, execute the transaction. We have seen this one already when we have talked about the validate action. Save to the database, save successful state, and then pass this information to the workflow. This flag, purchase successful, is important because depending on this flag, checkout will redirect customer either to the finish step or the final step, or to the payment step to check his credentials and make sure that payment method was signed properly. Maybe customer did a typo in the credit card ID or in some other credentials. And now let us see how it is work on the workflow. So this is the place where we are calling run action group called B2B flow checkout purchase. So this is the entry point for it. And here we can see the actual call of the payment purchase action inside that B2B flow checkout purchase action group. And here we are passing our entity. So pay attention, now it's not checkout, now it's already an order. We are passing total, we are passing currency, we are passing payment method, transaction options, and we are getting our response data, which is later checked after this action group is executed. So pay attention, here we have a condition in the redirect action. Here we are comparing purchase successful flag with true. So if purchase action was successful, then we are redirecting customer to the finished checkout. Otherwise, if it was not successful, we are directing it to the transition called payment error, and then customer has to enter the payment credentials again and complete the checkout again, and it has to be done in order to properly finish checkout and make sure that everything is all right. Couple of best practices about the usage of payment method and payment transactions. So if you want to mix additional values to the payment method context or charge existing ones, you can decorate a service called OroPayment Context Rules Converter Basic. Let us check this service and let us see what do we have there. So this is the service and this is the class, and here we can see how data is extracted from the payment context. And so if you want to have or pass some new variable to the context, let's say to use it during the expression calculation, you may decorate this service and pass new value here after the total. If you want to store additional payment data in the checkout, you need to write a special JS trigger for this JS event called checkout payment addition dataset. By doing that, you can organize JavaScript interaction with a party API, or you may basically put anything you like there. And the important part here that it's not stored in Oro by default, it's stored in the browser. So please be extra careful about the data stored in the customer user session. So this is where it is triggered. And as you can see, it's triggered before the payment validation event. And here you still have possibility to modify the data entered by the customer. So for example, in this case, this one is for the Authorized.net bundle. Here we are checking the CVV. So here you can see we're getting CVV data and passing all this data to this event in order to do validation. Documentation, here we have the payment guide. So this is a place where you can check all the methods we have out of the box, how they're configured, what kind of special options we have, and how to use them in production. And a special documentation article which explains in detail how to add a new payment methods. So you can see here all these classes we have discussed before: payment method provider, payment method view, and payment method view provider. And that's all about the payment methods. Let us check the questions. Okay, I don't see any questions in chat. So if we have no questions, let's make a break, 15 minutes, and let's continue. Our next topic will be shipping methods. Okay, let us continue. And before we'll move to the next topic, let me answer the question in the Q&A chat. So there's a question: is there a way to send reminders about the invoices to customers with payment terms? We don't have such feature out of the box, but it's quite easy to do as a customization. You simply need to get all the customers who have appropriate payment term, let's say net 30, and check all the orders which are not in status paid in full created during the last 30 days. And by doing that, you may immediately see which orders still have to be paid and By doing that, you can remind your customers so that they have to pay for the appropriate orders. You may use the segments for that. You may create a cron command for that. There are several ways how you can do it, but the small customization will be required here. Okay, let us move to the next topic. This one is called shipping methods. So now we're going to discuss how the shipping is organized on the storefront. We're going to see how to select shipping methods, and you will immediately see that the shipping methods are pretty much identical to the payment methods, but there are a couple of the custom traits of the shipping methods which payment methods do not have. And let's start from general information. Again, like payments methods, shipping methods are also configured from the backend, are also used during the checkout, and defines how product will be sent to user. Let me remind you that actual shipping is happening outside the Oro, at least out of the box. And you as a developer, of course, may add a shipment module or shipment handling to the Oro, but we don't have it out of the box. And again, like payment methods, shipping methods are also added via the integration. So let us try to check, let us try to do it, and let us see what do we have there. So first, let us check the integrations. Here we have a couple of integrations for the shipment. In our case, it is a flat rate shipping, and we also have a UPS shipping configured here. So flat rate shipping is the just flat rate shipping. We have nothing special here. And for the UPS, here we have test mode again. So it's in sandbox mode. We have test credentials, and we have also shipping services which can be used at the storefront. We are going to check them a little bit later. And if we go to the storefront, let me pick some shopping list. And if we return to the shipping methods tab, there we will see different shipping methods. We can see the flat rate, which is fixed $10 in our case, and we have three different shipping methods from the UPS. UPS third day, UPS second day air, and UPS second day AM, and UPS second day air. So these prices are coming from the integrations. We're going to check this a little bit later. And in general, customer can immediately see how much it will cost him to use different shipping methods he can directly choose here. And let's start from the standard shipping methods again. So out of the box, we have flat rate, we have UPS, we have DPD. Again, there is documentation that describes all these methods here. You may click appropriate link and see it in details. And you can also go to the marketplace and try to find the integration with your favorite shipping provider if it's none of these 3 or 4. Talking about the talking about the shipping methods, let me show you one more trick. We did not do it for the payment methods, but you can do a similar thing as well. I'm going to create 2 integrations of the same type. I'm going to create second integration for the flat rate shipping. Let's demonstrate you that it's possible. I'll call it second. I need to select payment appropriate integration type. Let me call it second flat rate. Or maybe let me call it just free shipping. So for now, customer won't be able to see it because we don't have the rule yet, but later when we will go to the rule section, we'll be able to edit and show it there too. So in general, you may have more than one type of each, you may have instance of each type of the integration, including payment integration, shipping integration, and pretty much any other type of the integration here too. Let us check the system configuration. And in system configuration, we have several things which we may be interesting to. So the first one is the shipping origin. This is a special address which you can use in your customization, or you can use in any place you like, used to understand what is the shipping origin, or what is your main shipping storage, perhaps, for the application. So pay attention, this is not a warehouse address, but warehouse address may fall back to this address too. And then we have shipping options. So shipping options allow us to tell which units of length, weight, and freight classes will be available per product. So let me remind you that these options are available on the product level to specify how this product can be packed and shipped. If we will go to the appropriate page for the product, here we can see a section called shipping options, where we can add all the items, all the product units we have for the current product, specify how much they weigh, specify their dimensions, so how big they are, again using one of the specific units of weight, units of length. And we can also specify how do you want to pack them, and basically tell the freight class. Let's say it's parcel, let's say it's package, it might be pallet, maybe container, and so on and so on. This information this is not only an extension point, but also a useful information for the shipping rules. We're going to see it a little bit later. So product options, it's a unit, weight, dimensions, and freight class. We have just checked them on the product page. And there is one more nice trick which you can use using the shipping methods. You may apply auto tracking number, and this auto tracking number for some shipping methods may be automatically converted to a link. So customer, either on the storefront or on the management console, can click this link and immediately see the tracking information related to his order. So how to use it? So in order to use it, you need to add a shipping tracking to the specific order. Let me pick one of the orders we have created recently. Let's say 120. And here we have a shipping tracking button, which allows us to add a shipping tracking information. So first I'm going to use the UPS because I already have it's pre-configured. I just need the UPS sample number. Let's say this one. I can put it here, and by doing that, I will allow customer to see it on the storefront in the management console too. But I can also specify a custom shipping method, which is not a part of the application, custom tracking, and put here some kind of code. And now here we can see shipping tracking section. As you can see, this one was immediately converted to the UPS link. And if I'll click on it, the application will direct me to the appropriate form for the tracking number. Well, it's not valid because it's an example, but if it will be real number, application or the UPS would show you the correct information about the order. And here we have the custom tracking, which is just a number because application does not know how to convert it to the link, but you may customize it. The same information is available on the storefront too. So let me open that order. This order with ID 120. As you can see, we have exactly the same table here too. Here we have custom tracking and we have the UPS. Now the shipping method itself. So like the payment method class, shipping method class also has its interface. However, here we have a new thing. Shipping method includes the price calculation, which tells us how much it will cost to the customer to use the shipping method and how much he has to pay additionally to have the product delivered using this method. So here we have shipping method interface is grouped. So this is a new thing because we may have multiple methods in one. Like say with the UPS, we have 3 enabled. Whether it's enabled, identifier, label, list of the types, again, array of the types, not one type, specific type identifier, options, and sort order. And then here is the implementation of the UPS method. Pay attention that it implements special shipping tracking aware interface, which allows us to use that tracking URL. And in fact, here we even see an example of this tracking URL. And the implementation. So it's grouped, enabled identifier. So all this coming from the configuration, the appropriate form type, the sort order. And the important part here is the calculation of prices. So in this case, we need to fetch prices via the API. So that is why we have the fetch price method, which actually have a cache. And if we don't have this cache calculated yet, here we have the transport, which represents connection with the API. And here we can request the information about the prices for the specific products. Here we have price response, and here we have prices, price for each of the shipping methods we have enabled in system configuration. And we have shipping method type. So shipping method type is the special type you may see here. Again, it's an identifier, label, sort order, configuration type, and calculates price. So in fact, it's sort of the part of the shipping method. And here is a method type for the UPS. So here we can see this internal identifier. So in fact, every time we are rendering this kind of page, we have here one shipping method and multiple shipping types. So these are 3 shipping types. Label, sort order, calculation of the price. Pay attention that it uses a cache, but cache for the main type, cache for the type and cache for the method is the same cache. So application will not do another request if it's already cached there. And here the place where actually setting the correct price and assigning it to the required method. And we have shipping method provider. Again, like with the pricing method, we have a class responsible for generation of appropriate methods. Interface, get shipping methods with all interface, which have to implement shipping method interface. Get shipping method by name, has shipping method by name, and the implementation for the UPS. Again, extends standard channel shipping method provider, which provides you ability to use default implementation from OroCommerce. And now the shipping rules. So shipping rules works pretty much the same way they work for the payment methods. So you can also specify name, sort order, currency. You can always also use destinations. However, this will be shipping destinations, not payment destinations. You can use expressions, and one more thing, for some methods you can also specify a prices or additional values, like for example handling fee or packing fee. So let us check that, and this is exactly why I have created the new integration for the flat rate shipping. Let me show it to you. Yep. So here we have this free shipping, but I do not have a shipping rule for it yet. That is why it's not available yet. But now I can add it. But before that, let us check the original shipping rules. Here we have a shipping rule for the flat rate, and here we also have a rule for the UPS. Let's check them one by one. So first, the flat rate. Flat rate just allows you to set how much you want to charge customer for this shipping of order, and you may charge him either the price or price plus handling fee. As you can see, handling fee is optional, and you may charge it either per item or per order. And here you will be able to see how much it will be used. And again, here you can restrict usage of the shipping rule per website. And here's the place where I can use expressions. And if we check the second rule, this one is for the UPS. Again, name, label, stop for processing destination expressions. But here, after I have specified the required method, I can specify the surcharge. surcharge for everything, plus surcharge for each of the separate shipping types for the UPS third day select, UPS second day air AM, and UPS second day air, and the websites too. Now let me create new shipping rule for the shipping method I have just created. I will call it free shipping. Here we have the free shipping, and because it's free, I have to put it price to 0. And again, I'm going to use a simple expression which allows us to use it only if customer ordered, let's say, more than ordered products that cost more than $1,000. Again, I need to use expressions. Expressions syntax can be found in the documentation. Same thing we have did for the payment methods. Enabled. And that should be it. So now we have 3 shipping methods, and let us check if it works. Yep, so now you can see free shipping, which means you can grant free shipping if customer have ordered more than $1,000 of products. But if I will decrease this value to, let's say, less than 1,000, here you have 120. As you can see, this shipping method no longer available. So this is how you can charge different shipping, different amount of money for different types of shipping depending on the order total, but you can use other parameters like billing address, shipping address, customer information, customer user information. And again, you can use the same trick with the adding a flag for each of the shipping methods. Let's say you have local shipping, you have countries shipping, and you say you have shipping across the continent. In this case, you can specify the expression and tell who will be able to use which of the shipping methods. Talking about the shipping methods on the checkout, they again generated using the shipping context. So here we have information about the shipping. The shipping context is used to understand, first to resolve the expression, and second to understand whether specific shipping method is available or not for the customer. And here we have a shipping price provider. This is the entry point for the price calculation for each of the payment methods. So here we have shipping context. Well, shipping context interface here. Application iterates over all the rules, gets all methods config for each of the type, of course, creates appropriate method view, and then here we have a get price method, which is receives the context, the method, and the type, and resolves the price for this specific method, for the specific method, for the specific context, using our data. So here we have get enabled type options, and the calculate price. This is the interface method from the shipping type. Couple of best practices related to the shipping methods and shipping prices. Again, if you want to mix additional values to the shipping method context or charge existing ones, the developer can decorate shipping context converter. This class is identical to the class we have seen previously for the payment, and there developer can also add additional options which later can be used, let's say, in expressions. Here is the method, and here we can see how the context is converted to the appropriate variables. Let me remind you again that shipping itself is not handled by the Oro, but if you want to, you can add a customization and add a shipping module to the Oro. Oro itself allows you only to mark order as shipped, add the shipping options, which we have seen, and add the shipping tracking number to the order. Just to remind you, if you want to mark order as shipped, there is a button here called marked as shipped. And pay attention, order now has internal status open, while after I click it mark as shipped, it will become internal status shipped. And the references, just the links to the order documentation. Here you can see how shipping rules work, what kind of tricks you can do with them. Basically, you have here the same tricks we have seen for the payment methods. And also the guide how to add a new shipping method. Again, you have to add the shipping method, you have to add shipping method type and shipping method provider. So these are classes you may need to have in order to organize your custom shipping method. And that is it. Any questions? I don't see any questions neither in the Q&A chat nor in the regular chat. Okay. So if we have no more questions, let me just remind you that tomorrow we're going to have a last day of our OroCommerce webinars. Tomorrow we are going to have a big Q&A session. So if you have some questions about the way Oro works in general, about some kind specific use cases, some kind of maybe tricky scenarios you experienced in the past and you want now to work with Oro and implement them, feel free to come, feel free to ask these questions. I will be happy to answer them. For now, thank you very much for participation and see you tomorrow.